Far too often, Asian communities are seen as permanently foreign, eternally newly arrived, impenetrable, unknowable even. And yet, Asian Americans have arrived and stayed here for hundreds of years. And many Pacific Islanders are indigenous to this land and to lands this country has colonized. Despite our linguistic, religious, and ethnic diversity, despite our internal hierarchies and oppressions, our centuries old conflicts, we see ourselves and we see each other. In our countries of origin, we have invaded and waged war upon each other. We have been displaced and immigrated to each other, and we have intermarried among each other. We live alongside each other in diasporic communities here, embedding newer communities inside long-standing Asian American neighborhoods, whether they be Queens, Minneapolis, or Houston, or San Francisco, and everywhere else in this country. We know who we are, and our community media know us too. For nearly 200 years, community media for and by AAPI have told the stories of Asian America. The earliest Chinese language newspaper in the United States, the Golden Hills News, began publishing in San Francisco in 1854. And for much of our media history, our outlets have served to organize us and to narrate our survival and our resistance. Hawaiian language newspapers for and by Native Hawaiians have been publishing since 1861, when they wrested control of local journalism from colonial missionaries. Japanese prisoners founded and published newspapers in each of the 13 internment camps where some 120,000 Japanese Americans were detained between 1942 and 46. During the Civil Rights era and into the 1980s, Asian American activist journalists like Corky Lee and the student journalists who founded the GIDRA organized together with Black and Latino activists to secure rights for all of us. In a very real sense, we can trace this legacy of survival and resistance through storytelling to the poems would-be immigrants wrote on the infamous talking walls of Angel Island Immigration Station, where they were held often for years on end off of the California coast during the Chinese Exclusion Act era. AAPI storytelling and journalism have not only been a part of American history, it has written much of it. Today, a growing movement to teach and learn Asian American history is building across the country. AAPI community media contain much of this history and offer the pathway forward to Asian America's future. The fastest growing community in the United States, with Asian Americans projected to be the country's largest immigration population by 2055, the imperative to sustain AAPI community media, the most trusted and often sole reliable news source for linguistic and vulnerable immigrant communities, this is as critical a mission as ever. Yet, in a changing media landscape, many of these outlets face relentless pressures and threats to their existence. The Asian Media Initiative at CUNY's Newmark Journalism School is dedicated to supporting, sustaining, and growing this powerful media sector. We are proud and honored to join our brilliant colleagues at the Center for Community Media's Latino Media Initiative, Black Media Initiative, and Advertising Boost Initiative to build solidarity across the sector and mutual insight across diverse community media for immigrants and people of color, to learn from what has worked for other media sectors, and to design programming that responds to the unique needs, innovations, and challenges facing Asian and AAPI serving media. In the coming months, we will be undertaking a needs assessment ever National Asian Media Map and Directory, publishing original research and convening public events on Asian media landscape, and convening specialized peer-to-peer networks for Asian media journalists to support each other. We will also be using all of this to design targeted programming explicitly designed to build sustainability in the sector. We are so excited to get started. If you work in Asian media or are interested in learning more about our work, please reach out to me at anytime. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists for the first part of our conversation. Dr. Shirley Tang is a professor of Asian American Studies in the School for Global Inclusion and Social Development at the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. Shirley is a national leader in developing a model of curricular innovation for digital storytelling, pedagogies of wholeness, and AANAPISI-centered knowledge production. She has more than 24 publications in print and received the Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Teaching at UMass Boston in 2016, making her the first woman of color to receive this honor in the university's history. Led by Dr. Tang, the Digital Storytelling in Asian American Studies Lab is a nearly 20-year commitment to student and community-centered knowledge co-production, research and documentation, and archival development. Digital storytelling productions from the lab contribute to training, community capacity building, and public awareness. And I'm sure no stranger to many of you in this room is our own Jahangir Khattak, who is the Communications Director at the Center for Community Media at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism. In addition to helping the center's outreach to New York City's community media, he oversees journalism training, fellowship programs, and the Newsmakers series, which bring community media leaders into conversation with government leaders to hold them better accountable to our communities. Khattak worked for and with the Metro New York-based community media for more than 2 decades. He is passionate about a sustainable community media ecosystem that produces journalism that informs and educates communities, and as it does educate communities and promote civic engagement. Jahangir began his career in journalism in 1986 in Pakistan, working for a variety of English language daily newspapers. And during the 1990s, he covered the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the subsequent civil war and the rise of the Taliban and the upheavals in Pakistan. Then here, he covered many of the crises that resulted from that ongoing crises here and how they affected our communities here. He remained the president of the largest press club in northwestern Pakistan and worked for international organizations such as Reporters Sans Frontiers. We are so lucky to have both of these titans in this space with us today. And before we begin our conversation, I would like to invite our dean, our new dean, who for the last 3 years has led the Center for Community Media onto the national stage, the inimitable, wonderful Graciela Boschowski, to share a few words of welcome. Graciela, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kavita. That's very generous, and you are inimitable and, and amazing. And so this initiative is Kavita's. From the beginning, she pitched this initiative. She advocated for it. It was clear that this was something that the center was missing. And so I'm so proud, and so I'm teary-eyed. You know, my eyes are kind of. It's an emotional moment because it took a lot of work to get to this moment. So, just to introduce myself very quickly, I'm Graciela Boschowski. As Kavita said, I've been the dean of the Craig Newmark School of Journalism at CUNY for 7 weeks. This is the 4th day of my 7th week. Since 2019. I was, until August, I was the executive director of the Center for Community Media. So for those of you who are, a lot of you are longtime friends of the center, but for those of you who are not so familiar with our work, the center serves community media across the country. And basically, we sustain and work with the sustainability of media outlets serving communities of color and immigrant communities. The center was born in New York City. Jahangir is one of the pioneers. He's been part of the center from its founding many years ago, from before it came to the school, as one of our main priorities here at the school. And it has been serving New York City media outlets, and now New York State media outlets, and then since 2019, outlets across the country. We, as Kavita mentioned, we had a Latino media initiative a Black Media Initiative. Cheryl Thompson Morton is here, and she's been very successful at creating and expanding that initiative. And now we're just this was kind of the missing piece, an Asian Media Initiative to serve outlets and journalists nationwide. So this is a big priority for the school. This is connects directly with our idea, with our mission, with our what we believe the industry should be. We think community media has been absent from the national conversation about media and journalism and democracy and social justice and racial justice for a long time. And we are part of we're not the only organization doing this, but we join other organizations in an effort to change that and to center community media and to bring into the national conversation the strength and the value and the importance, and why it's so important for outlets to be sustainable, for journalists to have the opportunity to thrive. So congratulations, Kavita, and I know this. I was really looking forward to this conversation. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to shut up and I'm just going to listen because there's so much. I know I'm going to learn a lot today.
Thank you so much, Graciela. Your stewardship has been just an essential part of this work, and we are all so excited to be able to have a dean of a national journalism school who cares about community media as much as you do. So this is really exciting. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to just move into our first moment of this event, which will be a town hall with these two absolute giants in the space, Dr. Tang and Jahangir Khattak. So I just want to very quickly start the conversation with by turning to you, Shirley. You have been at the vanguard of digital storytelling as a movement, designing the pedagogy that has empowered and engaged often marginalized and underrepresented AAPI youth and young people. I want you to tell us a little bit more about your work and vision and how AAPI serving community media fits into this landscape and the work that you've been doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kavita, and thank you, Dean. Congratulations to CCM, and I really appreciate the rich history of AAPI digital storytelling and journalism that you outlined for us, Kavita. Your comments reminded me of a scene from the 1980s and 1990s in Asian immigrant communities. Imagine a group of Asian men standing on a street corner, waiting to be picked up in vans to go to their jobs in restaurants and factories throughout the region. And each of these workers had 2 or 3 newspapers in their hands. Why? They were following the news in their homelands and in their local communities. And one newspaper was not enough, either in coverage or editorial perspective. Your comments also reminded me of the story of VHS video businesses in the US, also in the 1980s. Some of you might remember Blockbuster or VideoSmith home video rental enterprises. But several years before they reached mainstream American markets, stores in Asian American communities were already circulating bilingual news, entertainment, and other content on video cassettes for immigrant audiences. Itself had multiple memberships in New York and Boston Chinatowns. And the point here is that Asian immigrant communities were at least 3 years ahead of the rest of US society in terms of VHS media usage and innovation. Similarly, when cable television came to US cities, there were important examples from Asian immigrant communities about accessing and adapting cable TV technology in much the same way. Some of you might have similar examples or even memories of the early days of cable TV in Black and Latino communities. And the takeaway from this history is that we have a critically important sector in Asian immigrant communities who, as an audience, has always engaged proactively with media technology for news, entertainment, and community access to relevant stories. So I started teaching my course on Asian American media literacy at UMass Boston in 2005. Back then, the Asian American Studies field's focus on media typically emphasized criticisms of mainstream stereotypic representations of Asian Americans. So Hollywood, Disney, advertising, etc. But that was not me. Because of my immigrant background, I always had access to many media outlets and was not a prisoner to English-only US dominant productions. So in my course, I envisioned making a paradigm shift to recognize the relationship of my own Asian American students to their media contexts, knowledges, and needs. And like the immigrant workers on the corner, my students are from working class immigrant families. Some are US raised or US born and mostly bilingual, though not necessarily biliterate. Others are new immigrants, fluent in their native languages. And to be clear, these students are not studying to become journalists or media producers, yet their experiences and perspectives very much reflect the context of the majority for Asian immigrants, particularly in urban settings like New York and Boston. My course has evolved amidst digital transformation, no doubt. And the paradigm shift that I have made involves enabling consumers to become producers. The growing accessibility and convergence of multimedia tools, consumer electronics, and social networking platforms such as YouTube and Facebook, and later Instagram, enabled me to radically transform the course and wholeheartedly focus on using digital storytelling along with community research and contextual analysis to counter dominant media caricatures and mainstream cliches with students' own real-life, real-story products. This brings me to the importance of what I call producers of the majority. For everyone attending this discussion, who are the majority in Asian American communities? What are their stories? What are the means and platforms for their stories to be shared authentically? Through Asian American Studies at my own urban public university, we have been training and enabling students to move from consumers to producers and simultaneously reach a far deeper level of critical media literacy through the course for nearly 20 years. Fast forward to today, as a result of the digital transformation, everyone with or without access to Asian American Studies courses like mine is now producing, creating, and or circulating content. The immigrant workers waiting for their transportation to go to work are now consuming, commenting on, and sharing news stories and their opinions with their cell phones, which is very convenient, but with less clarity about source and credibility. And they are more limited to one's own social networks. I'll end with one other quick example, just to add another dimension to this discussion. Some of you might remember a group called New American Media that became very active in the late 1990s through the 2000s. In 2005, under the leadership of its executive director, Sandy Close, it evolved into a national multi-channel and multimedia news and communication organization with a coalition-like structure of ethnic community news media providers. By translating ethnic news media sources into English, they created an online platform for sharing rich, majority minority-centered news stories with ethnically diverse audiences in the US and globally. Their unique story archives could be searched by language origin across issues or by issue across multiple languages and communities. In the midst of digital transformation, this was a powerful vision, which they sustained for 12 years until New American Media ceased operations in 2017. So clearly, media outlets continue to face many pressures and challenges. And Kavitha and Hangir, please take it from here.
Thank you so much for that rich and very comprehensive look at what community media has been, can be, and how we can actually understand how we have engaged actively and powerfully with our own news sources. What you said, that language about not being a prisoner to how we have been represented outside of our communities, is so evocative to me, and it means so much. And that is actually how I see, how I want to understand Jahangir's work in this space. So Jahangir, you've had such a long and storied career in journalism. You worked as a journalist and a newsroom leader, both in Pakistan, where you have actually covered one of the most impactful wars in the 20th century, and here in New York City, Pakistani and Muslim American community media, where you have been at the front lines of responding to one of the most defining experiences in Asian American history, the post 9/11 experience of Muslim, South Asian, Central Asian American communities and other immigrant communities that stood in solidarity with them. And I'm thinking here also, you have been a pioneer in advocacy for community media for nearly 2 decades. So I'm wondering, with this wealth of perspective and experience, I wonder if you can give some insight to us and share a little bit more about the role that you saw for immigrant serving community media as a producer of immigrant serving community media in the post 9/11 landscape, and how structural pressures on the community media sector today are impacting how our media can respond to new crises affecting our communities.
Thank you so much, Kavita. Congratulations again. I wish to congratulate Graciela as well, because it is her leadership that really has brought us where we are at. So congratulations. And I'm sure that under your vision, Kavita, and your experience and passion, and Graciela's guidance and commitment to this media, I'm very sure that our Asian media will really benefit from this new initiative, and it's a new feather in our work that we have been doing for years, and I'm really delighted, and it's a milestone for us. So certainly congratulations again. In terms of the media that we have worked, you and me and Graciela and all the entire team, we have worked with this media for years, and we have worked in multiple ways. We have supported the media on the marketing side, on the editorial side, in terms of the future as well. And at a time like in post 9/11 America, when I was also fairly a new immigrant at that time, and I used to be the editor of a Pakistani English language weekly newspaper. At that time, we had our own struggles, because at that time, covering the community was extremely, like, I think as important as today, but I think at that time it was more. Why? Because there were so many untold stories, and there was a lot that needed to be done. And at that time, the community media, whether it was Pakistani or any other community media, I think they played a critical role in informing their respective audiences, educating them, because there were so many new laws coming into effect, and they were pretty discriminatory laws as well, many of them targeting Muslims. At that time, people had no knowledge of it. Mainstream media certainly would not cover all those. And the community media was taking that space and was trying to educate its readers. And I think at that time, and even today, community media also played a critical role in organizing the communities. Whether at that time it was the post 9/11 civil rights movement, or it's today's where we have all kinds of challenges, including related to immigration and local politics and all kinds of trends which we are seeing, and then hate crimes against Asians and other communities. In the presence of all that, the media remains critical. This community media remains critical. And to me, community and ethnic media, or we call both as community media, is both legacy and immigrant, because they are they have a long history, longer than many newspapers that can claim that title. And then they are covering communities which are like many of them are new arrivals. So I think I will start my comments with the immigration, because I feel that all the media that we see today is playing a critical role in increasing civic engagement. And civic engagement comes with informed citizenry. And informed citizenry comes with a very vibrant press. In a city like New York, which is one of the world's most diverse cities, and certainly one of the most diverse city in America as well, where according to the New York City government, more than 200 languages are spoken, where more than 37% of the population is foreign born, where 1.8 million New Yorkers have little or no English language skills, and where people from these communities use their own media for information. So this media is very, very important. And then if you look at the immigration process, so when you come to a country like America, so you basically migrate, like move from your country of origin and come to America. And then you go to the assimilation process where you start assimilating the local culture, traditions, and try to understand the system. And then you integrate. And when you integrate, then you are more engaged at the civic level. And that's where this media plays a critical role, because if a city's 1.8 million population is has limited English language skills or no, then in that case, this media gains more importance. And that's one more reason that this media should be very vibrant. And another thing, you see, America is of course a country of immigrants, and every immigrant is a story. It's a story for a journalist. And we have so much to share here. And this media brings so much to the table. And if we want to integrate these communities more into the mainstream, and we want them to be more active on every front, we have to really empower this media, not just because they have been doing what they have been doing for like more than 100 years, or rather more than 200 years maybe, but they also are educating the new arrivals. So this media's growth is critical both for civic engagement, it is critical both for integration of communities, it is very important for an informed citizenry, and it can really shape opinions that really will matter and matter and are always impactful. I'm glad that America is slowly waking up to this reality of community and ethnic media, because in the past, yes, people would say it was pretty fashionable that, yeah, this is the media that covers communities, but we did not see that much traction between our media and the mainstream policymakers, decision makers. But now slowly it's happening. We have seen it at the city level where we in 2013, our former dean, Sarah Bartlett, wrote a white paper about how the city is advertising. And that one research was so impactful that down the road, when we continue to work on this, we saw that the city started advertising more, and our colleague Darlie Gervais has been doing an incredible job. Graciela has been really incredible. She has done a lot on it. So I think that all that has helped because the politicians are waking up. The government is slowly waking up. Just to give you an example, in 2010 census, the Census Bureau had identified 12 hard to reach communities. Now, what is hard to reach community? Hard to reach community, according to Census Bureau, was the community from where the response rate was very low. And at that time, they partnered with the community media of those communities from where the response rate was low. And they got pretty good results. In 2020, again, you saw that we did see, a significant amount of money being spent, not just by the Census Bureau, but also New York City also, and other cities also, advertised a lot in the community and ethnic media for the simple reason that people trust this media. People, in fact, this media owes its existence to the communities that it covers. So that's why I say that this media is extremely important. It's playing a very central role in American society. It is enriching the society. It is educating the society. It is informing the society. And I feel that the more we invest in it, whether through trainings or through fellowships or through access to information programming or any other programming that comes, or through research, I think that will bring to the fore more about the very effective role that this media is playing. And I feel that this program that you are running, Kavita, I think it will play a very central role in not just helping our media in more meaningful ways that can help our colleagues and friends to overcome many challenges that they are facing. In the age when news consumption patterns are changing, information consumption patterns are changing. The age of print media, many people think that the age of print media is over. For community media, I always, even though I don't deny the fact that we are living in digital age, so we cannot, of course, stay aloof. But in community media, I think print media remains a very important component because of its own very special environment in which it operates. And also, I think there is a demand for that. And in terms of sustainability as well, our print media will be there. I know that in the age of these changes, technology and all that, we are trying to help our media to overcome that shrinking space that they are seeing in terms of advertising dollar coming through print. Now they are shifting slowly to the digital side, and we are working on that side as well. And I'm sure that this entire program will really be extremely helpful. I can speak more, but I will stop here. And and I again congratulate you. And I wish to tell everyone that please join us and work with Kavita. And I am also always there to be of any help that I can do for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, Jahangir. We can all listen to you and continue to learn from you for forever. You have such a wealth of knowledge in this space and expertise. And thank you so much for those framing comments. What you spoke to is the importance of this legacy print media, but I'm also very intrigued in Asian media in general. Asian communities are incredibly online, both in countries of origin and also here, and are some of the most active users of online platforms that are maybe not used by other communities, such as WhatsApp and WeChat. And these digital platforms, this digital activity is really transforming the space. And I think there's, as I am starting to learn from you and from so many others in the space, there's really a false dichotomy in many of the conversations around journalism, the idea that print is exclusively for new immigrants or vulnerable immigrants or maybe recent arrivals or for older generation, and digital is for young people and Asian Americans who mostly speak English or are using things. We find in Asian media that's not necessarily true, that many newer outlets are using digital spaces to connect resources with vulnerable communities, and that digital transformation is playing out in very different ways. So Shirley, I want to follow up with you and go back to you. You have been one of the pioneers in Asian American studies, in the movement for Asian American studies, and you've been really at the spear tip of digital transformation and digital information processing in Asian American spaces, which is not only radically changing how information moves through Asian American communities, but how people, like you mentioned in your earlier comments, consume and process information. So can you reflect a little bit more on that for us and what you see as the future for Asian studies and how Asian American communities receive, process, and distribute information from your perspective?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I can certainly talk a little bit more about Asian American studies. And I just want to say that I'm very happy. I'm feeling very nourished to be in the company of both of you, seeing how, the support and the community here. I couldn't help it. I have to comment on it. So Kavita, you mentioned Idra and Corky Lee earlier, and I think in the early days of the Asian American movement, many of the same people were involved with journalism, teaching, healthcare, community advocacy, arts, etc. And people doing one thing were also doing other things with a holistic vision. There was not so much a separation into different fields or professions or agendas in many cases. And so, for example, I was recently looking at some archival materials from visual communications, the first ever nonprofit organization in the US dedicated to accurate portrayals of Asian Americans through the media arts, visual communications. And I discovered that its founding legal name over 50 years ago was Visual Communications, Asian American Studies Central, Inc. The name says it all. This kind of community-grounded, holistic, vision-centered organizations and individuals are the ones that I draw inspiration from as I train our students and build our platform for digital storytelling in Asian American studies at UMass Boston. And I'm sure many of you here are involved with the current community mobilizations in the wake of anti-Asian violence. Fresh demands for Asian American studies, especially in K-12 education, are leading to new legislation requiring the teaching of Asian American studies, as well as planning for a national museum of Asian American histories, etc. These important developments clearly need the contributions of Asian American studies educators, Asian American journalists, Asian American community activists. But one of the continuing challenges will be, are the stories and voices of the majority fully included and addressed? Hashtag activism, for example, after the 2021 Atlanta shootings, clearly did not change the daily life conditions of Asian migrant or women workers in Atlanta or anywhere else. A year and a half later, what are the stories to tell, not just trend, about Asian American struggle, resistance, success, healing, and more? So my point is, we need the voices and perspectives and analyses of grassroots organizers, community artists and journalists, and extraordinary ordinary people. And so to wrap up, to answer your question, Kavitha, and to connect with what Jahangir just shared in relation to immigration, community organizing, and civic engagement, I would argue that Asian American studies training is critically important as one part of the professional preparation for journalists and also for teachers and policymakers of any background. Anyone with decision-making power or influence needs Asian American studies in their education. But the public, especially our working class community members, also need Asian American studies in order to be responsible consumer and producer audiences themselves, directly demanding realistic, authentic portrayals and coverage, and data justice-centered interpretation. Because in the digital era, they are also creating and circulating content every day. How does that sound?
That sounds amazing. Everything you say sounds amazing. Jahangir, I want to go back to you for one last follow-up before we turn to our brilliant community media journalists who are here to share their own insights with us. But you know, Shirley has spoken so eloquently about just not only the importance of digital communication, of people learning how and being very conscious about how we process and distribute information using these digital tools, but also to understand that the digital landscape presents both opportunities and challenges for our community media sector. So I'm wondering, in your work, you've done so much work to kind of boost and undergird the sustainability of this sector. What are some of the specific innovations and opportunities, as well as some of the very powerful and very real threats to community media for and by AAPI that you see in the digital media landscape? And how do you think we should be responding collectively?
I think that digital media itself is a huge opportunity. Different mediums that are available are really very important tools that are being used by our friends in the media to promote their journalism, to spread their journalism, and even to do their journalism. And also, I feel that they have been, there are so many examples, like, for example, in the Chinese community media. They have a platform. They're using like WeChat, which is widely used by the within the community for messaging and information consumption. They are using it very effectively. Pretty much every newspaper have their presence there, and they are very active there as well. And I'm sure that my colleagues will shed some light on it as well. But I feel that that's a very good opportunity. Then on social media as well, the more this journalism that this media is producing, really excellent journalism that many of these outlets are producing, and it is appreciated and respected as well. And as they spread their work on different platforms, each platform offers its own opportunity. And those may not be very big opportunities in terms of revenue streams or possible revenue streams, but these are very, very good possibilities that are being tapped, and I'm sure that many are already taking advantage of it. So that's, I think that there's a huge space out there that is open, and our media is adjusting itself. And those who are catching up, they are also cognizant of it, and they are trying to catch up on that in terms of technology and presence, and the journalism that they're producing using that platform for sharing their work. Another, I think, the huge problem that I see, and again, I think our colleagues will talk about it, is the disinformation. I feel that since this social media sphere is very open-ended, anybody can go and just post something, and within 1 or 2 hours, depending on the platform, that can really go in any direction. And if it is wrong information, weak story, or somebody like I remember that somebody South Asians use a lot of Facebook for their work. So somebody used an article from Onion, Daily Onion, to to spread some story. So if you have those kinds of examples, though that may be like an innocent mistake, or maybe like lack of information on that person's behalf, that he didn't know enough and he just posted it. So that's one thing. But then there is a very measured and calculated, campaign that are campaigns rather that are being run on these platforms. And those are, I think, a huge challenge for our own media. Like the media, the genuine media, like the World Journal, Singtao, and other newspapers in the Chinese community, or Korea Daily and Korea Times, or any other like News India Times, or there are so many that I can name. All they are producing excellent journalism. And then one unknown outlet, or somebody who poses himself or herself as an outlet, come and just spread some stories or something which is not based on facts, that can really compromise not just the healthy information space that we are looking for, but also I think it compromises the hard work that our colleagues are doing in that sphere. They are producing journalism, they are spending time, they are keeping their followers updated about what's happening or what is coming up, all that. So I think it's a huge threat. So I feel that while there is an opportunity, a lot of opportunity in the digital sphere, I feel that this very space is a huge challenge for our community journalism as well, because it is unregulated. Of course, it's free, free speech, and people can do whatever. But the problem is that it is definitely becoming a challenge, a serious challenge. Rather, it is undermining like a clean, fact-based journalism, because one person, whatever the intentions may be, can really create unnecessary confusion, or even it can go into hate speech spheres and all that kind of, whatever, any direction that you can think of that is negative, it can go in that, because they are able to do that. And countering that, like if you are an editor of a community newspaper and you feel that in the sphere that you have worked so hard for, and you have so many following there. People are waiting for your stories, and all of a sudden somebody comes up and your weeks of hard work, like fact-based reporting, is just washed away by one bad lie. And somebody is just using that, rather abusing that space. So I think that's a very big threat to our journalism as well. Disinformation, misinformation, and abuse of this space. So I feel that that's a big problem. Now, how do you overcome that is certainly, I think, a big challenge. I don't think I have a perfect answer for that, but I feel that the more we go into this technological advancements, and I feel that the more our own colleagues in this media sphere, especially those who are working on their online as well as these social media platforms, they need to be better tooled. They need to be more, they need to receive more trainings just to make sure that whatever is happening, anybody who is abusing the sphere cleverly is not just stopped, rather is also dealt with in a way that their lies are exposed and fair, honest, and clean journalism is promoted. So I feel that that could be one way, like where you can really retool your organization, train your journalists even more, and be on top of technology and be on top of the trends that are happening. And
Absolutely.
that could be one reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just want to briefly take the opportunity to mention, I see some of the folks in the room here. We are in the process, we are collaborating closely with a team of researchers at UMass Amherst who are very involved in understanding how disinformation moves through the community media landscape in the Asian communities. And so please stay tuned. We are hoping to, through our needs assessment, really be able to offer some original research later this fall and further on in the spring about how Asian community media are responding to the threats of disinformation, and what kinds of tools they are using. I know some of the newsrooms that are represented here in our conversation today, including Tayo Help. I believe I briefly saw Piauba, which is run by Justice Patch publisher Jin Xianyu. And I saw a couple of other folks who are also involved in a lot of the fact-checking networks that are happening. So please stay tuned for that. Also, those of you who are interested should know that we have been holding an Asian Media Women's Network for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 months. We meet on a monthly basis, and basically the space is largely there to support women journalists working in Asian community media, many of whom are targeted on a daily basis by online harassment, disinformation campaigns. Some folks here I've seen in the group who have been targeted directly by MR Asians and other hate groups. So please know that we are here to support you with all of that work. And thank you so much again to our brilliant panelists, Dr. Shirley Tang and Jahangir Khattak, who have just given us so much wealth to work with here. Dr. Tang unfortunately has a previous engagement, but very graciously took the occasion to actually join us even ahead of her other appointment. And I know that she's going to be a friend and close ally of this work for the years ahead. So thank you so much for your time and for being with us. And we'll send you the recording on the back end of this. So thank you again. Now for the next part of our session here, we're going to be turning to all of you, really. This is going to be an open town hall conversation for all of you who work in Asian community media to really share your insights, your expertise, and your own pressures that you're navigating on a daily basis. But to kick off the conversation, I'm going to tap 4 extremely awesome community media leaders who I think you should all know if you don't already. I'm going to ask them one by one to share specific insights to the work that they do. First, I'd like to introduce all of you to, I'm sure all of you already know her, to Rong Xiaoqing, who is a senior reporter at Singtao Daily and has been a long time leader in the space and a friend of the Center for Community Media, and has been reporting on Chinese communities here in New York for many, many years. So I want to ask when you began towards the local journalist here in New York City Chinese language media, your outlet that you worked for, Singtao Daily, was one of the very, very few trusted, reliable in-language news sources for your community. And I'm wondering how you see your work and role evolving as New York City's Chinese community continues to grow and continues to grow with diverse communities from all over. And Chinese and backdrop and plan always. I'm wondering a little bit about your involvement.
The good news is I joined Singtao in 2002, and almost all the Chinese language media outlets that were around there, around at that time, are still around now, except for just the Mingpao Daily. And we're all trying to adapt to the new media environment by establishing our websites or creating the social media presence. And the Chinese community has been growing very fast. And that's a good thing for us. We always have a lot of readers or potential readers. And the community now get very complicated. It's much more complicated, different parts against one another, but this is not necessarily a bad thing. Indeed, it's a good thing for journalists because we have more stories to cover and more interesting topics to discuss. But the bad news is bigger. All of us are struggling. And some of the reasons are the same as everyone else in the industry has been experiencing, just like the readers are changing their ways of getting information. We're shifting online, but how do you make profit based on your online operation? That's a question in front of all of us. But some other reasons are unique to the Chinese language media. Like Jehangir mentioned just now, WeChat. Challenges from WeChat is so enormous for us. WeChat is the most popular social media platform among Chinese in China as well as overseas. It's controlled by the Chinese government, so there is rigorous censorship on WeChat. But on the at the same time, WeChat is also a lawless territory. The information that the Chinese censor don't think is threatening to their regime are allowed to freely flow on WeChat. So I've been working with the National Conference on Citizenship to trace the misinformation on social media in Chinese language. Here are the few tasting samples for you guys the misinformation I found on WeChat in the recent week, maybe, or 2 weeks. The NIH has listed ivermectin as a COVID treatment. BLM members are robbing people at gunpoints in Manhattan. The Biden administration are chasing after Trump supporters and trying to persecute them. So these are the things that you see every day on WeChat. But some people may say, oh, this may not be a bad news because this creates a space for the traditional media to chime in with your legitimate information. That might be true in an ideal environment, but the fact is we are indeed struggling, being strangled by the WeChat operation as well, because there are hundreds and thousands of so-called self-media. These are like one-man shop or probably it's like blogs, but many of them don't have original contents. Where their contents come from? Us. So I bet all the reporters in the Chinese language media have found their stories stolen every now and then. Everything's sometimes not even a word changed, just the byline is not there. So these media won't identify where the sources of the stories or who wrote the stories. Sometimes they even add more seasoning to make it more like a clickbait or to push it closer to the misinformation territory. I'll give you an example. Like there's a story in the World Journal recently saying that the asylum seekers that were bused to New York from the south border, some politicians are now trying to work to help them to get work permit earlier so that they can settle themselves here. And the World Journal story in the last two paragraphs interviewed one immigrant who are documented immigrants who are waiting for her green card. She said, "Oh, this is so unfair because I've been waiting for 3 years for my green card." So the World Journal article, the headline is, "Asylum seekers may get work permit first, and some legal immigrants say it's not fair." But this story, now after World Journal published it, just went viral online. Everyone picked it up without mentioning the World Journal, but with all like very strange headlines. You know, the headlines like, "Legal immigrants are furious. Legal immigrants are outrageous. Legal immigrants are passing out because of anger." So it feels like there's an imminent war between documented and undocumented immigrants that's going to break out soon. So this is the environmental we're facing. And it's very hard for us to chase after them or hold them accountable because you don't know who's behind these avatars. So I'm sorry for like ending on this depressing note, but I think the audience are smarter than me. You guys may have a good idea to help us to get out of this perilous situation.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Rong. It's absolutely, I think, very important for all of us to share this and speak frankly to this thread, to your work. You have spoken so eloquently to me in the past about the importance of just seeing, you know, Chinese language journalism as local media, and to have outside actors from outside of the community cannibalizing your work, repurposing it for, you know, for geopolitical conflict purposes is very upsetting to see. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I do feel confident that the space, we have many people who have similar experiences, and that we can put our heads together and think through this. Now I'd like to turn to another great friend of CCM, Kishore Panti, who, after a decade of publishing the most widely read Nepali language news media outlet in the United States, which is called Khasukhas, and serving a community with multiple vulnerable community members like TPS recipients, resettled refugees, many domestic workers, people who have organized from the margins of New York City society to claim power and what is rightfully theirs. You have recently launched an English language outlet for Nepali Americans well into the second generation. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of your expertise and insight on how the news needs of these two different segments of your community and of your news audience. How do these news needs differ and converge? And how do you balance the needs of new immigrants or vulnerable immigrants with the news needs of longer term immigrants, US born, maybe who don't need an in-language resource?
Thank you, Kavita. First of all, congratulations all of us for Asian Media Initiative. Finally, we have Asian Media Initiative. And thank you, Jahangir. It's possible, extra new fair is possible because of the hard work of Kavita and Jahangir. I know that. And yeah, we are working in this community, in Nepali community, since a decade. As a journalist, I'm working as a journalist, and I want to, in fact, the history of Nepali community media is not so long in the USA. We have just around 25 years of history in USA. Now we have started to publish Napier for new generation. what we were covering and what we're gonna cover, I'm gonna tell about this. Before, we used to cover the news from Nepal and news from Nepali community. Mostly media used to cover the news from Nepal before, but now the landscape is changing, Needs of Nepali community is also changing. News patterns are changing, and a number of US born news generation is also growing right now. That's why we recently launched Nepali media, English media network, which covers mostly Nepali diaspora in the USA. Before, Nepali community members were happy to read Nepali language only. But situation has been changed now. Now readers want resources. We are committed to provide those type of information and resources which matters most for our community. And number of US born Nepalis are also increasing. That's why we launched network, which is in English language. We have started 2 video shows too. Recently, we did a talk show with New York Health and Hospitals about health benefits for undocumented and new immigrants too. Most of the time, even if we provide all information in Nepali, for generation immigrants always struggle to understand technical aspects of the message. English news portal helps second generation to understand the provided message, and they can help their family who came here as a first generation immigrants. That's why we started network. In the community, community journalism is not only the business of reporting, writing, publishing newspapers. Of course, it's like it's the business of community building. It's advocacy for community and immigrants. We started network to advocate about this, advocate about the needs of immigrants. Language barrier is also a main problem, of course, and we are talking about linguistic justice since very long. And Nepali community member cannot understand the government language. They can understand, they can read English language, but they cannot understand government language, which is the language used by the government is often complicated. And they cannot the language of law. They cannot understand the language of law. And we started network to simplify this. And even government resources are not in Nepali language. Most of the government resources are not in Nepali language. It's in English, but it's still complicated to understand for immigrants. And in Khasokhas, we publish the resources like how to apply for state ID when you come to the USA, how to apply for social security card, how to build the credit, how to buy homes. We publish this type of resources in Khasokhas. And in network, we also cover this type of resources in simple language. Immigrants community can understand this language, and it will be useful for those community. And mostly it's a community integration too, because Nepali cultural, non-Nepali community can also read Nepali diaspora through network. Non-Nepali speaking community can understand the issues of Nepali community, we hope, and Nepali culture, Nepali people through network. And US born generation, Nepali generation cannot read Nepali properly. This is the main issue. We are trying to fulfill the cultural gap too, to better understand the community, immigration issues. They can understand better, and they can help their elderly parents and other people. We have different type of culture in Nepal, in South Asia. we have different types of culture, and in the USA there is different type of culture. Cultural integration is also most important thing. For example, we call to our relatives by relation. We don't call by name. And in the USA, people call by name. If we call by name, it's a kind of disrespect in our culture. And we put some words like, if we say Kavita, we don't say only Kavita, we say Kavita ji. Yeah. This type of cultural integration is also needed for new generation. And otherwise, if they don't learn the cultural thing, parents or elderly people will feel different type of like disrespect and different type of things and different type of gap. We are trying to eliminate that cultural barrier between two generations and create a strong relationship between the family members too. That's why we created Newmark. That's why we launched Newmark. Still, we had Khosokhas, but for the cultural integration, for linguistic integration, and to eliminate the barrier between family members, we created Newmark. And we are committed to provide resources in simple language through Newmark too. We are publishing resources in Nepali language through Khosokhas since 10 years. Before, newspaper were like only literary newspaper. Newspaper used to publish literary articles. And since 10 years, we are publishing the resources, and we are publishing the matters, what matters for community. We are publishing those type of matters. And I think we can fill the gap between Nepali speaking community and non-Nepali speaking community through Khosokhas and Newmark. It's very hard, challenges are growing, opportunities are also growing. I hope we can address those challenges with the help of Asian Media Initiative.
Thank you so much, Kishore. Actually, it was really interesting to hear you speak about cultural barriers and taboos. I remember having a very powerful conversation with the chief of Moi Viet, serving Vietnamese community in California and internationally. Really, they actually are a very powerful outlet serving the Vietnamese language speakers across the world. And he was mentioning how cultural taboos can actually threaten the sustainability of the outlet as well, and how the role of the editor-in-chief and the newsroom leader in an Asian media outlet is to be kind of a cultural interlocutor and also an intermediary who can smooth over some of these cultural conflicts. And he was describing a challenge in which they had published a piece that was about celebrating people in the community who had been leaders, who were kind of invisible leaders. And there was a beautiful essay by a woman who was writing about her mother-in-law who had worked in a nail salon all her life and had put her through college. And they commissioned a Vietnamese American artist, someone who was born and raised here, who made the understand some of the nuances of the culture tabs, and paid this beautiful piece to accompany the essay that was an image of the woman in the nail salon with the Vietnamese flag in the background. And because there are cultural taboos about putting the flag in proximity to pedicures and kind of feet and feet related things, there were huge protests that cost the outlet a tremendous amount of money. And Kishore has also spoken, Inda as well, has spoken to the challenges of trying to address some of these cultural taboos and make sure that every piece that is published here locally also does not cause any rifts in the community. So with that said, Inda, I know I had originally said that I was going to turn to you next, but Janina has a prior engagement and is going to have to leave us shortly. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to turn very quickly to her. And I actually think this is the perfect kind of a transition point in the sense you were speaking, Kishore, so eloquently to the challenge of creating solidarity and bonds within a community across generational lines and linguistic lines. And Mochi Magazine, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I hope all of you will go and support and check out. Mochi Magazine is one of the very first news magazines for Asian American women. And you are, in your role, dealing with a very different type of solidarity challenge where you have to speak to pan-Asian Americanness across the entire country. You are a national outlet. You are serving Asian American women and girls from hundreds of different parts of the country and from hundreds of different cultural backgrounds. And you're serving Asian Americans who maybe are 2 and 3 generations into the United States. So I'm wondering, how do you define your news audience and how do you serve this audience given the enormous diversity within that?
Yes, thank you so much for having us. I think when you say it like that, it feels like a lot of pressure and a huge weight. But it's such an honor to be here sharing space with so many Asian community media outlets today. It's amazing to be considered a legacy outlet, right? So Mochi Magazine, we got our start over a decade ago, and our founders put their heads together because they wanted to create a space where teenage Asian Americans could feel seen and heard. And knowing that many Asian American girls in the 2000s, grew up with very restricted in their family, sisterly and gained self-esteem. During that time, they covered verticals like entertainment, beauty, and relationships. The team dived into topics like prepping for prom and like eye makeup and things like that, which were fun, but for a younger audience. So today, 13 years later, Mochi has grown up with our original readership. We've also grown our audience. We aim to be a collective community for Asian American women, and we still cover the usual beats of like entertainment and arts and culture. But as editor-in-chief, I lead a strong activism and personal narratives, 2 columns that are really near and dear to my heart. Our activism column really works to educate about the multiple histories, the current movements, and future pathways towards social justice for our communities. And then our narrative column called Our Voices allows us to showcase the many different sides to being Asian American through first person and often guest submissions. These essays elaborate on a personal experience that changed how the writer understands their complex and overlapping identities. When you put that all together, I would say Mochi Mag is defining what it means to be Asian American, as are all your outlets here today that create content for Asian Americans. So this term Asian American was coined in the late 60s by activists, but at Mochi, we understand that being understood as a monolith can be frustrating and conflicting, in addition to the original beliefs of being like uplifting and powerful. So we focus our efforts on solidarity rather than trying to create a clear definition of our readership or even what Asian American means. And I often remind my staff that every article we share adds insight to the evolving nature of being Asian in America, and what it means to be Asian American. So I would say we serve our readers by providing genuine, honest, real portraits of our lives, our interests, and our passions, as activists, educators, writers, students, mothers, and so much more, right? We have a volunteer staff of over 30 Asian Americans across the United States, and we give our time, our energy, and ideas to foster better relationships with one another in this like umbrella of Asian Americanness, and also with other marginalized groups. But I think it's really important at the same time that we make room for self-care, joy, and community in doing that. So that is a little bit about our work, and I'm so appreciative to share space with you all today.
Thank you so much for Janina for being here with us. And if you need to get going, we'll just catch you up later in the Asian Media Women's Network meeting, which is upcoming, which is very much a space for joy and self-care and solidarity and sisterhood. So again, just another plug for those of you who want to join us. We are always welcoming. Now I would like to turn back to the wonderful Indah Nuritisari, who is publisher of, I think at this point, the only national Bahasa language Indonesian serving outlet left in the country. I believe there may have been a couple of other outlets, but I believe Indonesian Lantern is the last man standing, last woman standing. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And I want to ask you, actually, going back to the point earlier that we were discussing, the idea that there's this false dichotomy between print and digital media, and an assumption that new digital media is largely for second generation English speaking audiences, like the ones that Mochi Magazine serves, and that legacy print outlets serve new immigrants. We know that, you know, the Indonesian community, like other Asian American communities, are incredibly online. And I'm wondering how, if you could share a little bit of insight about how you've specifically used digital publication and innovative journalism forms to actually serve and protect and connect new and more vulnerable audiences, including new arrivals who may be undocumented, asylum seekers, struggling with literacy issues in any language, and more.
So thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and congratulations to all of us. So Indonesian Lantern was started in 2013 in Philadelphia, and initially we were a print media, and then we were formalized in 2014, and we became full digital in 2015. So in 2000, our mission is to inform, to empower, and to celebrate the Indonesian community and the diaspora in the US. In 2016, we created our Facebook page and Facebook group, and then the group now has around 3,000, one group, our group, and then we created a WhatsApp group as well. So if we all know that Indonesia is one of the biggest users of Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp in the world, and Indonesia has like 700 languages, but we all speak Indonesian. Most of us, most of Indonesians speak Indonesian. So during COVID-19, we hear from people that you should do a video, a documentary on the Indonesians in Philadelphia. When we started, we had more than 13,000 Indonesians here. We have up to now 15 Indonesian churches in South Philadelphia. If you're familiar with South Philadelphia, it's not big, but we have 15 Indonesian churches and one mosque, and around 30 nonprofit and small businesses, Indonesian small businesses in South Philadelphia. So they gave us an idea to create a documentary. So we created our first documentary about the Indonesians in South Philadelphia affected by the pandemic. It was very touching. We got the funding from Facebook. It was Facebook Journalism Project. It was telling the story not only because Indonesian, as we know, are very diverse, Indonesians in Indonesia and here in Philadelphia. So we could capture the stories of how they survive, how they deal with the pandemic. Some of them didn't want to get vaccinated and things like that. So, and we are growing. Thankfully, this year we joined the Philadelphia Media Founders Exchange by the Ledfest Institute. It was a 5-month program, and we learned about how to be sustainable, how to create partnership, how to engage better with our community. And at the end of the program, this is the good news, we got funding. So we were able to get our studio, and then we were able to finish our documentary, our latest documentary. This documentary is now chosen to participate in one of the biggest film festivals. We are so happy. So we are able to tell more stories. So we are now on, we have our YouTube channel. So we try to tell more stories using video storytelling. I think it's also not only because it's a new way to tell stories, but also because the demand. And then our readerships are not only here. We have right now in Philadelphia around 13,000 based on the data from the community leaders, the pastors, and around 50% have limited English proficiency. But then our media is also read and viewed by Indonesians in another countries, in Indonesia and in Canada, in Europe, in Singapore, in Japan. So I think, and then we just joined a program at the Lanfe's Institute. It was 2 days ago, no, on Monday and Tuesday. So, and we around, I think more than 150 media attended the event, and we learned that to survive, we have to change our business model. You know, but the needs are there. Our media will survive, and I'm very optimistic about it. And then, you know, this is our 9th year, and we were struggling before. All of us have another job. But then starting from this year, we have 1 full-timer, we have 8 part-timers. So personally, I am optimistic that the community media, the ethnic media will survive. The needs are there, the community is strong. We just have to find the better way to communicate and also to partner, because without partnership, we will not be able to survive. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's just incredible. I'm really excited to hear that you're participating in the film festival and that these stories are being heard, you know. And one thing that you've shared with me in the past, Indaz, is, you know, how your role in earning trust inside the community, given that there are so many divisions inside our communities, and you may be from a different, you know, ethnic or linguistic or religious background from the community that you serve, which are also Indonesian Americans. Your immigration status may be different. So I think there's so much.
If I may add a little bit, so Indonesia,
yeah, please, go.
Indonesia has 700 ethnic groups, as we know, and then here in Philadelphia, it's very diverse. So it's sometimes, you know, it's very hard to understand their needs. But we also have town hall, you know, discussions. We meet in person before COVID. During COVID, is all by online. We do also art and writing workshops for children and youths. We also create writing competition in 2017. We published the book of the winners, and we also you know, discussions on immigrations and legal, you know, matters and crime. So last year, more than 11 Indonesians became victims of robbery, and then it became national news. And then some Indonesian students became victims of Asian hate crime in the public transportation. So we created a town hall, and we partner with the Yellow Whistle program, where, you know, people, Asian, you know, people who use public transportation can use the yellow whistle to call for help, and then ask people to call 911. Because if we say, you know, help, sometimes, you know, people don't really help us, people run away. So if we use whistles, and it really helped, it was really helpful. We continue doing the program as well. So I think, you know, what I learned from the summit that the Lanfe's Institute of Journalism did the beginning of this week is that we have to partner, we have to learn from each other, and we have to help each other. So we will survive.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to keep growing and surviving and thriving. And I really do think, like Cheryl has shared so powerfully with us from the Black Media Initiative, which I would love to also let all of you know that the Black Media Initiative has given way to another peer network that has just launched the very first Black Media Headline News channel, which is very exciting. So there's so much that we can do also to collaborate and to help each other in our survival. And I really do feel strongly, all of us at CCM feel very strongly that the best leaders for us is us. And we will always find resources, insight, leadership, wisdom, strategies inside our community and inside our spaces that will not exist outside, because the priorities of a corporate-led or a mainstream newsroom, the resources they have, the strategies that are available to them will not necessarily work for us or our communities. So I am so excited about the future here. I wanted to very briefly, before I know we are running out of time, which just I think speaks to how necessary these spaces are. I want to just share, there are a couple of people who registered ahead of time and had put some questions in for their registration that I think we can pivot to. One is a journalist named Lauren Hakimi, who asked, how do we gain the trust of immigrant communities? And Lauren says that, I personally cover Middle Eastern and Central Asian Jewish communities. And Lauren is very eager to know how we gain trust. So I want to just open this up to the floor to everyone who is here. There are so many of you who work in community media and who have been here for so long. How have you gained the trust of immigrant communities who maybe come from backgrounds where they are not as comfortable with news sources, or where there maybe have been violations of press freedom, or where they are so vulnerable and strapped by the challenges of their daily life that they may not even have this? And I see here, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I do see April Shu is here, and they have just conducted a really powerful survey with Chinese Americans that produced a lot of results. I see so many other people here. So I want to open this up to the floor. How do you gain trust with new immigrant communities as journalists? Who wants to respond? Just unmute yourself and jump in.
Could add a little bit. So I've been in the community for more than 20 years. I am part of the community, right? So I think it has to be organic. They have to learn about us, who we are, and we have to learn about them. We have to listen more. So I was working for a nonprofit for 10 years, working with refugees, helping refugees. I was working with refugees from 45 countries, actually. So, but then, I think they will trust us if we are in the community, we work with and for them. So it's not like we just write stories that we want to publish. We have to listen to them and publish, stories that they need. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's also a question from Lavina Melvani, who publishes Lassi with Lavina, that's an online outlet that is formed by Asian American, South Asian American women. And Lavina asks, she wants to know how to connect digital media to ethnic communities, since print media has had so many setbacks. And I think Inda has spoken very powerfully to what that is, but I actually want to see if I can tap. There's someone here from an outlet that publishes exclusively on WeChat called Chinese in US. And we have heard from some of our legacy community members about the challenges that WeChat has posed to their work. But there are outlets who are out there, like Justice Patch and Chinese in US, who are doing accurate journalism and trying to serve audiences on WeChat. So I wonder, Chinese in US team, would you be willing to comment a little bit about how you use digital platforms to connect with new immigrants?
Oh, hi. We are from Chinese in US. We have a website, WeChat, WeChat official account, several of them, YouTube and other media platform. We are located in Philadelphia. We have the several WeChat account, separated the news about governor, citizenship, voting, and right now it's during the time we do the voting, because in how to say, in WeChat we have like the news and the article environment know very well, and they don't have the more information about the US. We have the image, the mainstream, how to say, we have the different idea about, we think we think another way, but actually in the United States, they have another thinking, but we thought something is right, but actually it's come to another way. One thing is have like a totally different news results. So they will think the same thing, have the different thinking. So that's right now we just want to make deliver the truth and the mainstream the what happened in the world in US, in United States world, deliver the information to our community, because some of the, how to say, some of the WeChat account, they delivered they trans the idea from the original article. They so right now we just see that, and we try to like deliver the information directly from the, actually when we begin our work, a lot of people ask us where the source you have you come from, like they say a lot of our Chinese news company, they always say the news from Fox, the news from CNN, the news from other news company in America. But we say our resource from governor blah blah governor blah blah is deliver directly the information to them. So they really surprised, say, yeah, your original, like the information from the governor is not translate, and the idea is like same with the who beginning to say that. It's not like the we all know the like folks, they say something, they will have their own opinion, and CNN, they will say something, they will have their opinion too. So we just want to let our people know the original things, the original news. Also, I think we don't have like a lot of knowledge, technology, knowledge about the voting, about the, how to say, the representative, the city council, that we have lack a lot of information from the governor about the like voting. So they don't know. So our people, we don't have the we don't know how to do to how to say, to use our right. We totally doesn't have the idea. We don't understand how the work in US, the process, the everything process. So we just want to educate our audience to know the how American run.
Thank you so much for sharing. That, I think, is, you're doing, as we say in India, yeoman service. So thank you so much for your great work and for everything that you do. We did have one last question, or I guess not a question, but a comment from one of the registrants. This is a gentleman named George Johnston, who said he just wants to introduce everyone to the Pacific Citizen, which was founded in 1929 and has a national audience. George, are you here with us today? Would you like to share a little bit more about your outlet, or if you'd prefer, we can also just share a link to the outlet in the follow-up email when we share a recording of this as well. And I also wanted to briefly answer a question from one of the participants in the chat, who asked if this initiative has funders and how we plan to distinguish ourselves from Asian American Journalists Association. And I just want to sort of briefly thank you for that question. I think one of my colleagues did drop the link to our announcement from some of our recent funding. We've actually, we are very fortunate to have funding from a number of major journalism organizations, funders, and I think credit goes to Graciela Ardeen, who unfortunately had to leave to go to another meeting, but she has really advocated on behalf of Asian media to create resources specifically for this initiative. And we're going to be in consultation directly with you, really thinking through how to put that funding to most impactful use. We don't want to just use it to, put a bunch of stuff out there that doesn't help you actually serve your audiences and grow and sustain your outlets. So we would like to, make sure you have that. I also wanted to very briefly tap Mark Calaguas, who is a member of the team at Tayo Help Desk, which is a new digital outlet serving Filipino Americans. And I think he may actually be a wonderful person to share a little bit of insight about how exactly to reach bilingual and communities that maybe have trust issues and how to build trust. But Mark, feel free to share whatever you'd like. And then Jung, I see your question, and then I'll have you next. I'll tap you next.
Sure.
Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Kavitha, and everybody for putting on this event. So really quickly, Tayo was launched in fall of 2020 with some seed money from the Booz Allen COVID Innovation Fund. It is operated by the Filipino Young Leaders Program, or PhilPro, which in the past, has been based off of a 1-week immersion program in the Philippines for leadership development for young Filipino Americans. We pivoted during the pandemic to set up a COVID response task force. And so this project started off as an online help desk to combat misinformation among the Filipino immigrant community and to provide, trusted, culturally tailored information regarding the pandemic. So to help folks, navigate how to access government resources, mental health and social services, and things of that nature. And we partner specifically with local Filipino American organizations. So kind of we draw on the strength of networks, our personal civic engagement efforts through our core team, which is very lean, but our alumni network at PhilPro is over 80 folks in all different industries and academic backgrounds. So the core team of Tayo consists of, journalists, attorneys, social workers, physicians, public health experts, educators, and people and creative folks. So we're really are an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary team. And since then, we've evolved to include a hotline, which replicates the website's services. So we can finally reach that one segment of the community who may not be as tech savvy, particularly our seniors. And then also we are evolving from kind of like this COVID response to a long-term kind of resilience project, where now, in addition to putting out content we are also Public One contribute to the dearth, who reverse the dearth of information on Asian Americans, and specifically disaggregated data on Filipino Americans. So folks like journalists and policy advocates can actually have more quantitative data when going about their work, whether it's pitching a story to their editors or advocating in front of lawmakers. So again, I'll drop a few links into the chat. And one last shout out to the UMass Disinfo team. They're also close partners with us, particularly with the Asian American Disinformation Table, which is a working group to again address the broader problems of racialized disinformation among communities. And I'll send a link to our landmark report, which was published last month.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're sharing that, Mark. I was going to actually suggest that we share that in the follow-up, but I want to encourage everybody to take a look at that. And if you are not familiar with Tayo Health, with Piaoba, which is Chinese language fact check, Viet Fact Check, which is doing fact check in Vietnamese language, Basi Fact, which is doing fact checking on the enormous, which I receive daily in my WhatsApp from all of my aunties and uncles in India, enormous amount of disinformation coming from South Asian media ecosystems. I want to encourage all of you to do that. And if you're doing other fact-checking work, I also want to shout out, I dropped it in the chat, but shout out the incredible work that Kishore's team at Khas is doing. They have, of their own volition, just launched, as far as I know, the first and only Nepali language fact-checking resource, which is responding to disinformation that's happening inside the community. I know a lot of you are dealing with this, so thank you so much for that. I want to also just boost, there was a question here from Jung Park, who is at the LA Times. He covers Asian American communities there, and is asking what mainstream media outlets can do better to serve community media. And this just kind of dovetails with the earlier question that was asked in the chat about what we do specifically that differs from Asian American Journalists Association. First of all, I just want to give all of the flowers and snaps to everybody at AAJA. You guys have been doing the work for so long, just really creating space for Asian American journalists for so long, and just doing a tremendous amount of work for our communities. But we really don't have any other resource in the country that is a national organization that specifically and explicitly focuses on community media. We are great friends and allies of Asian American Journalists Association, and we are going to work very closely with them. And I'm very happy to share that they're actually thinking a lot more about community media for and by Asian American Pacific Islanders and Indigenous communities from Asia, as well as Native American Journalists Association, which is now the Indigenous Journalists Association. They are also doing a lot of work to support Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian, and other Indigenous communities from Asia. So we're going to be working closely with them. But what differs with us, what sets us apart in this initiative, is we are exclusively dedicated to community-based media, including in-language media that is for and by Asian American communities, local journalism, pan-Asian solidarity groups, in-language outlets. This is your initiative, for you, by you, only for you. So we will only be responding to the pressures that community media face. That's what sets us apart. So Jung, I want to open the floor up to you, all of you with your expertise. How do you think mainstream media can better serve our communities? Does anyone want to jump?
So if I may say something, so Indonesian Lantern was partnering with WHYY in the past, and also with Generosity, and now we try to work with Philadelphia Inquirer. They have their own community journalist, community editor. And I think by giving us more space, to voice our stories, I think that's how the mainstream media can really help us.
Wonderful. Does anybody else have any thoughts or comments to share, or any insights? I see some real giants in the community media space here with us. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if anyone wants to jump in, please feel free. Otherwise, please know this is the first of what I hope will be an ongoing community space. I understand we have so many different outlets across the country, so I'm hoping we will have an ongoing series of town halls. Please reach out to me to share any of your concerns. If any of you would like to participate in the needs assessment and take a chunk of your time, Kishore and Inda have already given me hours of their time to share insights from their work. I've spoken, Joe, with your colleagues on your business side at World Journal. But if anyone else would like to share with me about some of the work that you're doing, some of your challenges for sustainability, and really how you're building your outlets and your audience into the future, please reach out at any time. Otherwise, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for the incredible work that you have been doing, many of you with a tremendous amount of pressure on your wallets and your time, with very little support, often in obscurity, without visibility, without support. I hope we can all come together and support each other and be a real concrete resource to all of you in this time. And please know that we love, appreciate, respect, and admire you deeply, deeply. and can't wait to bring more visibility and resources to this space. Thank you all for being here today. I look forward to much more. Thank you all. You're the best.